All right, so today we're going to get into the mind of a seriously monumental figure, a guy from the 13th century, a Dominican friar, whose ideas didn't just influence Western thought. They pretty much built the framework for it. We're talking about Thomas Aquinas and his work. Wow, it's like a masterclass in building an entire intellectual world.
So you might be asking yourself, why are we talking about a monk from the 1200s? It's a fair question, but here's the thing. The answer gets us right to the heart of a huge turning point in history. It was this moment where two massive ideas, faith and reason, were just heading straight for each other on a collision course. And the way Aquinas handled that whole crisis, well, that's a story that, believe it or not, still resonates today.
Okay, so picture this. It's the middle of the 13th century in Europe. The whole intellectual scene, everything, is guided by faith. You could call it the tradition of Jerusalem, right? It's all about scripture, the church fathers like St. Augustine. Then, all of a sudden, this flood of texts washes into Europe from the Arab world. And these aren't just any texts. It's the complete works of Aristotle, the absolute giant of Greek philosophy. This is the voice of Athens, a whole worldview built on nothing but logic and what you can observe.
And this was, a total earthquake for the intellectual world. Aristotle's ideas, they offered this incredibly powerful, complete system for explaining reality, and it didn't need God. It didn't need revelation at all. So for the big thinkers at, say, the University of Paris, it suddenly felt like you had to make a choice, a really stark choice. Were you on team faith or team reason? Jerusalem or Athens? It looked like there was no way, absolutely no way, these two could coexist.
So right into the middle of this intellectual firestorm steps Thomas Aquinas. And you have to picture him. He was this quiet, kind of humble Dominican friar, but his mind? It was just electric. He looked at this massive conflict, this choice everyone thought they had to make, and he didn't see a threat, no. He saw an opportunity, a chance to build something new, a grand synthesis. And this project? Well, it would become his life's work, a work that ended up being millions of words, all written out by hand.
Now check this out, because this quote just completely shatters any stereotype you might have about medieval thinkers. We tend to picture them as these guys who just blindly follow dogma, but then you get Aquinas and his most famous work saying this: an argument based on what some human expert says is actually the weakest kind of argument there is. The weakest.
Okay, but there's a really important distinction he's making here. He's talking about human authority. See, for Aquinas, there wasn't really a war between faith and reason. He saw them as working in different but totally complementary areas. He thought reason was this amazing, God-given tool that could figure out a ton of stuff about the world. But for the really big mysteries, the stuff that's way beyond our human ability to grasp, like the Holy Trinity, well, that's where faith and divine revelation come in.
And that, right there, was his whole project in a nutshell. He wasn't picking Athens over Jerusalem or vice versa. He was building a bridge, a huge, sturdy bridge connecting them. He basically said, look, philosophy and theology, they're different fields, sure, but they're both pointing to the same ultimate truth. Reason can get you amazingly far. He even thought you could use it to prove that God exists. And then, right where reason hits its limit, faith takes over. It's like that famous line of his, grace doesn't come in and destroy nature. It comes in and perfects it.
So to build this bridge, Aquinas knew he had to start with the absolute foundation. The bedrock of reality itself. And he did it by asking a question that sounds so simple it's almost childish, but his answer is the key that unlocks his entire way of thinking. The question is this: what does it actually mean for something, anything, to be? What does it mean for a rock, a tree, or even you to exist?
Okay, so here's where he starts. He makes this really crucial distinction. First, he says everything that's been created has an essence. Just think of it like a blueprint. It's the whatness of a thing. It's what makes a tree and not a dog. It's the definition, the nature, the pure idea or potential of that thing.
Right, but a blueprint isn't a house, is it? It's just a plan. And that brings us to the second and honestly more radical part of his idea, existence, what he called esse. This is just the raw, simple fact that the thing is actually real. It's the act of being itself. It's what takes the blueprint for treeness and makes a real, solid living tree that you can actually touch.
And this little distinction, it leads to a ridiculously powerful argument. Think about it. In anything that's been created, its blueprint, its essence, doesn't automatically mean it exists. A blueprint for a house can't build itself, right? The idea of a tree is just potential. It has no power on its own to just pop into existence. And what that means for Aquinas is that for every single thing you see around you, its existence had to come from somewhere else. It had to be a gift, an action from an outside cause.
Okay, so if you follow that chain of logic, this thing gets its existence from that thing, which gets it from that thing, you realize it can't just go on forever. It has to end somewhere. There has to be a first cause. And this is where Aquinas gets to his most mind-blowing conclusion, I think. When it comes to that first cause, God, he says there's no difference between that it is and what it is. The two are the same.
Let me put it another way. If everything we see is a mix, a combo of its blueprint and its actual existence, then logically, there has to be something at the very start that isn't a combo. There has to be one uncaused being that doesn't receive existence from something else. It doesn't have existence. It simply is existence. And Aquinas had a name for this reality, Actus Purus, or pure act. And just think about what that implies for a second. What is change? It's just moving from being a potential something to an actual something. So if a being is pure act, it has zero unactualized potential. None. That means it can't change. It can't decay. It can't become something else. It just is, purely, simply, and eternal.
So this table really lays it all out, the whole grand philosophical map that Aquinas drew for us. On one side of the ledger, you've got all created beings. Everything is a mix of potential and act, a combination of its essence and its existence, and it gets its existence from somewhere else. But on the other side, you have God, utterly unique, just pure act, a being whose very essence is existence itself, the uncaused cause of everything else that is. And this incredible synthesis, it didn't just solve the problem back in the 13th century, it created this incredibly strong intellectual framework that would go on to shape Western civilization for centuries. His genius in weaving Aristotle's reason together with Christian faith is what earned him the title Doctor Communis, the common doctor. His thinking became the go-to reference for everything from theology and philosophy to ethics and law.
And you know what's wild? His influence never really faded. It just keeps coming back in waves. He was made a saint less than 50 years after he died. Fast forward centuries to 1879, and you have Pope Leo XIII calling for a global revival of Thomistic thought. It seems like every few generations, people rediscover his work and find totally new ways to apply his ideas to their own time.
But maybe the most surprising part of this whole story is happening right now, today. For hundreds of years, Protestant thinkers often built their own theology by defining it against guys like Aquinas and the scholastics. But here's the twist. Modern scholarship has shown just how much Aquinas himself relied on St. Augustine, who was a huge hero for the Protestant reformers. And that realization has opened up this whole new, fascinating dialogue. You now have Protestant theologians seriously engaging with Aquinas on everything.
So in the end, what Aquinas did isn't just some dusty old piece of history. It's a living challenge. He spent his entire life building this incredible, sturdy bridge between faith and reason. And when you look at our world today, which can feel so fragmented, where those two things, faith and reason, often seem like they're on opposite sides of a giant canyon, his 800-year-old project leaves us with a really big question. Is that bridge he built collapsing, or do we just need to rediscover how to build it all over again?